Okay. Okay, we're good. Cool. All right, Mark, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really, really appreciate it. Appreciate you for taking some time out of your day to hang out with us today and to talk through just GTM stuff in general, right? So we'll keep this like pretty casual today. I have a few questions. Maybe we'll get a few questions from people in the audience as well. I had a few people that sent questions to me ahead of our session today as well. So I'm going to make sure I run through those with you. We have this penciled in for like 45 minutes or so. So we would just kind of see how things run from there. If anyone is like watching this now, they'll know who you are because the reason they're here is because we're doing this session with you, right? So I don't need to run through too much of a thorough intro, but we're going to be talking about GTM. We're going to be talking about hopefully some like alternative angles or like thoughts behind GTM, what people are doing right, what they're doing wrong. And you have a bunch of experience in this space, which everyone will know. So obviously now you're like CEO, co-founder at Tack. You have been at a bunch of really cool companies that a lot of people will know about in the SaaS space, like Drift and HubSpot and Emmy and a few others like this too. So very excited to talk through all things GTM with you today. The first question that I have for you, and Manank, my marketing manager, who is here too, and we've been talking about this a lot recently, is is GTM just like a new word or like a buzzword for marketing? Or like what does GTM even mean these days?
It's a good question. I definitely think it's more than marketing. Go to market to me encompasses all the things a company needs to do to bring a product to the right people so that they actually get some sort of value from that product. So it's everything from product, marketing, sales, customer service, support, to the actual decisions you make from a financial standpoint, down to your growth goals, targets, ideals. So it's more all encompassing. So some people you could just refer to in the past, or they still do, as I have a business plan. So I've created a business plan, and now we've turned that into a fancy term, I think, in our little echo chamber that is now called kind of go to market.
Right. Yeah. I think about this a lot when we're in our own little echo chamber, like you say, of like all these terms that we create, like demand gen has been a huge one for a long time. Demand capture, when this came in, right? GTM, like whenever I do any kind of post on LinkedIn that includes the words GTM or some like narrative alongside GTM, people seem to get furious and up in arms about this, or very happy about this too. It seems like one of these divisive topics. I know. So your team, what I see on LinkedIn from you, you're coining this term like people first GTM, right? And so I think I would love to go into some tactical stuff a little bit later on in the session. But like as we're getting started, why did you and the team lead with that kind of angle? And to you, what does that actually mean as well?
So there's three things we could unpack that's related to like how you bring a product and how you grow a business. In my opinion, it's like the strategy, the channels, and the tactics. So I think what we hear a lot about typically is that the tactics, or the
Right.
channels, and what's neglected is the strategy. So if you just think about everything we talked about today with those three lenses or ideas, that might help here a little bit. From like a naming of something, I believe it's important to have a story, a positioning, a point of view that is beyond just the product positioning, product marketing, even category solution positioning. So I was at HubSpot, like you said, for a long time, and I witnessed firsthand the power of a narrative, the power of a narrative that can manifest itself into something bigger than just a really interesting and compelling story, but something that can actually be taught and be taught to a group of people to benefit them, and benefit their company in this case in a positive way. So that's where this idea of like, people first GTM was born from in one aspect. The other aspect is I'm always studying things that are just happening to people overall, and also happening to companies within our ideal audience, which is B2B software companies, etc. So there's many shifts happening. Some things have been happening as of recent. Some things have been a long tail. One of the biggest things is this shift on the internet from like a social or search centric internet, information gathering and finding, to a social centric internet. Um, some of that is due to hardware, like the mobile computing revolution that's happened in the last 15 years. Some of it's due to applications being built within that um, paradigm shift. Some of it has to do with uh, the invention of messaging being built into everything we do from an online standpoint. So there's like that shift. Another shift, of course, is the revolution or evolution of artificial intelligence, and how that's going to play out. Another shift is just the ease at which it is to create a business. It's like creating a business is not hard anymore. It's actually pretty easy. It's like actually finding and growing an audience, and finding differentiation that's defensible in ways to help you maintain a position of strength with your business. So anyway, I could keep going on and on, right? Like Dylan, but the point is, I felt the way that people were going to market from the brand's point of view. Hey, the brand is bringing this product to the market. The brand is talking about it, advocating on it. It's an old way of doing it these days. Does the
Right.
brand still need to, represent itself? Do you still need to create a brand archetype, which actually very few companies probably do? Yes, and you should probably lean into a lot of that stuff a lot more. But people don't trust brands, people trust other people, and just the way we buy things today has shifted a good amount. And B2B needs to rethink how to match their go to market to how people buy today.
Right. Yeah. And I think like one thing that control or is involved in this a lot, and I read this on one of your LinkedIn posts. I think it was maybe even today. You were talking about how important like storytelling is too, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
like the post of yours wasn't just about storytelling. I think you were kind of running through the people first GTM funnel, and there was a piece in there about storytelling, which I found super interesting because I feel like in the SaaS and the B2B space over the last, let's say, 6, 7, 8 years or so, it's become very normal for everyone to just like copy each other or like reframe what others are doing. Everything is the same. We're used to exactly the same playbooks. All the websites, the landing pages look exactly the same. The ads all look exactly the same. And it felt like we lost touch with storytelling and narratives a lot within the SaaS space. Actually, I think I did a video that we posted on my LinkedIn a few weeks ago. About this because I was reading some books on like advertising from the 1940s, for example, and it was so interesting to see how, of course, the medium back then was different, but like the format that they had to advertise and to sell in was essentially like A4 page, like long written sales letters with an image or something like this. But the power of storytelling in their ads was so much stronger than what we have now. I think over the last couple of years, we're definitely starting to see a resurgence of SaaS companies like leading with this like community first mindset and like building their own strategic narratives. We're seeing a lot more of like founder led branding, employee advocacy, where it's like true employee advocacy happening and not just the marketing team forcing everyone on the team to post the same link to the same webinar or the same session or whatever. Do you think this is like part of that journey from going almost like back to marketing fundamentals in some aspects and trying to step away from some of the like, well, not step away, but I think to meet the goals and objectives a lot of us have as marketers right now? I think SaaS companies are finally starting to realize that, hey, we can't actually, we can't really successfully do that if we just keep doing things the exact same way as we always have done and the same way as everyone else. And so like, how big a part of that is it for you when you're thinking and maybe even helping other businesses with their go to market? How much are you leaning into like, okay, do you first need to teach people like around the art of storytelling? Is that something that comes up? Like, how do you go through that that process? Because I think that's definitely a skill in itself before we even start talking about some of the like tactics behind GTM programs and stuff like this, right?
Yep. Yeah, storytelling, relationships, partnerships are the three things that make up like a people first GTM strategy. So, yes, I could not agree more. And really, what that is this essence of positioning and messaging, which is so, and that's what you were talking about, right? You talked about this
Right.
4-page letter, 4-page. It's a messaging, positioning, storytelling exercise. So, yes, like we've been way too focused and almost obsessed with software for the last 25 years. We've been blinded by what actually makes good marketing and selling and good go to market. which is the idea of connecting with another person through the power of words, like actual words, and then being able to add value to their experience with that brand outside of them just transactionally buying something from you
Right.
through a commercial, relationship in the context of B2B. So yes, storytelling is so important. It's so important. I learned this from my HubSpot days, Drift days, Airmeet. It's what makes you stand out. So the question is then, like, how do you lean into that? Well, you first have to understand that there's at least three layers to the story that you're going to tell. There's the brand layer, there's the solution category layer, there's the product layer. There's even more in that, right? Like you could tell a story about a specific feature that ladders into value, that ladders into your category, right? But like the art of being able to get someone's attention and then build a relationship with them through the power of storytelling, through the voice of other people, is extremely, in my point of view, fundamental to what good marketing is, and is a huge aspect of people first.
Okay. And so let's say there's a marketer like watching this, or they're watching this right now, or they see a clip of this or whatever, and they're thinking, okay, like I know that the way we are approaching our marketing and our go-to-market is maybe a little bit, maybe broken might be too strong, but let's say it's not working right now and they feel like they need to make a change. What are some of the first like steps or initiatives that they can take? Because like let's say getting a CEO or an executive board who have not thought about things in this way before, and they're pushing targets based on, okay, all they care about is let's look at, I don't know, ebook download numbers, how many of those convert to MQLs to SQLs, and they're just looking at the numbers and the data and nothing else. I know that so much of this has to come from the storytelling, from like the content perspective and everything else like that too. So how can someone start if they're in a company that's like, let's say, still doing things like the more old school traditional way?
I mean, the first thing I would show is like, folks, we've tried a lot of these things, they don't work anymore. So like, are you willing to change? If they're not willing to
Right.
change, just get out. I mean, I don't think it's worth your time, honestly. I
Right.
mean, maybe it is. Uh, you gotta show people that things need to change. First, though, like it starts with understanding the who. So like this goes back to like tactics versus channel versus strategy, right? So like if your company is asking you and focused on the tactics and the channels, and they're not working, you can pretty much assume the strategy is then broken. So if you don't have much influence over that strategy, it's really hard. It's uphill battle, right? So there's some of that, right? So it does depend on your position in the company, your level of influence, how motivated and committed are you to make this change happen? Because really, to do this type of go to market, it requires a belief system, a philosophical, belief that we need to do this differently. We need to market, sell, and serve our customers differently, and that typically starts at the top because this belief is about the culture of how you go to market. There's a cultural thing, right? If the culture of your marketing and sales is like, we'll do anything for it, at all costs. It doesn't matter. Like we're just gonna grow,
Right.
and just not focus on what really is going to create durable long-term growth. Then yeah, it's probably not for you, right? Like it doesn't, but I think because so many companies are not able to do that anymore, they don't have unlimited money. They can't raise more money. A lot of companies are, kind of these zombies walking around like, what are we going to do? Right. Like we're kind of stuck. Well, you're going to have to take a bet that the way in which you go to market, it's going to need to change, and you need to create a more long-term, durable flywheel. So to answer your question, it like with a lot of things, it really depends. I don't think it depends though on the culture. Like if your culture isn't designed and isn't willing to change to do this, it will be hard to do because you're going to be then pushing these ideas into your channels and tactics that just won't feel natural.
Right. Right. Okay. And I know for you, like from looking at your past, right, in your previous roles and some of the things that you did, looking at what you're doing now, even with your like the GTM news desk, like podcast thing that I saw too. I know like events and ultimately community is a big part of this like strategy and approach in this play. We actually have
Mm-hmm.
like a few. So Manank, my marketing manager, he's here with us. Like he's been pretty heavily involved in community at SaaS businesses before, even at Right Sonic, for example. Like Manank was doing a lot of community focused work there. Us for Hey Digital, this is like a newer thing that we've been experimenting with a little bit more recently when it comes to running some of our own Q&As, recordings, whatever. We've always just been very heavy on like content output on my own LinkedIn, on team members' LinkedIn's, but we've never then transitioned that into some kind of, I don't even know if community is the right word, but like involving other people and stuff like this too. How for you and because I know you're running this playbook yourself as well, and for the clients that you're working with as well, when it comes to like building a community or starting thinking about event-led growth or different items like this, in those situations, like where do you even begin? Because I know for a lot of people, the idea of like running events, both online, in person, transitioning those people into building a community, like I know that for most teams that makes a lot of sense, but I also know that a pushback for a lot of them is going to be like they're so short-term focused with their thinking of, hey, I need to hit this revenue number in the next quarter, and they might then overlook the impact of a community or events or whatever. How do you approach some of those kind of conversations, or like even what learnings do you have from your time at all the previous companies you've been at and what you've done now that can kind of like try and rewrite those narratives for people a little bit and help them truly understand the power of event-led growth and community-led growth as well?
Well, it just comes down to the two guardrails that you have control over for the most part, which is your budget and goals. Everything else is just a reaction to those two decisions. So I think that's, again, people overthink things. It's like, no, just what's your budget? What's your goals? And what can you do in those constraints or those guardrails, right? So, and budget, I mean, like that comes down to like people resources, right?
Yeah.
People are part of your budget. So I'm not neglecting that, right? So it's like, what is the business willing to spend? And then what is its, targets, growth or profitability or a combination of both. And then it goes down to like the who are you trying to reach and why, and then it's the product, right? So I think to answer that question, you first have to ask yourself, like, how often are we really self-aware of like what we're setting ourselves up with from a guardrail standpoint, right? Like these things that we can control, because if those things aren't set well enough, then yeah, you're going to do a lot of maybe unnatural or not right or unneeded things, or could be the other direction, right? So an example would be, look, we have a $1 million budget for the year. We're and this is a marketing and sales budget. Marketing and sales budget is $1 million for the year. We are a $5 million ARR company. And then you have to ask yourself, like, how much are we trying to grow, and are we trying to get to some level of profitability, right? And in which time frame, right? The time frame with the goals is important. From there, and then you have to ask yourself, all right, like, well, who are we serving, and why are they choosing us? Why are they staying with us? This goes back to like the product stuff now, right? And then you make decisions about like your question, like, should we use events, or should we do different things with events, or should we not? Like, so I just think it's, and that's where I think that's for so many of the things that you hear about, in echo chambers. I'm sure we're guilty of it, attack. Like it's really, take it with a grain of salt. It's really hard to just say that, yes, I'm going to do that, before you take a step back and reflect on what you've decided or what you should decide as the path forward for the business, and giving your team and all your teams the context needed, right? Like the best leaders that I've ever worked with gave so much context around all those things we just talked about, right? Like
Right.
those things, like without that, like decision making, it's either really hard or it's almost like a guess, right? So I'll pause there to see what you have to say about that, because like to answer that specific question, like how to get started,
Yeah.
like you need something to like ground you to get started,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious because like, so I know that we're in our own little like SaaS marketing, GTM, demand gen, paid ads, echo chamber on LinkedIn. We see this stuff every day, all the time. Like at Hey Digital, we're running ads for like maybe 26, 27 different SaaS companies right now. We've worked with a bunch over the last 6 years. So it's like I know that we're very much in our own little world with these things a lot of the time. But from what I do see, a lot of the other VPs of marketing, CMOs that we meet with, even on sales calls and things like this, there's so much content out there now on LinkedIn, especially other channels too, around so many different types of approaches too. So we have the people, for example, I think it was a month ago now, we had a Q&A session with Adam Robinson, right? And we were learning about what our B2B's approach was and how they've been doing things. That is drastically different to some of the more, let's call them like stereotypical startup MarTech businesses and how they do things. We see so much content right now around founder-led branding and like executive-led branding and how powerful that is. Like I think for you personally, for me personally, like that's how we've a lot of what's happened to help us build and grow our careers is through establishing our own personal brand, like storytelling through LinkedIn, through other channels as well. And I know that it's difficult for marketers now to try and figure out like, okay, which angle do we take even? Like, okay, do we go down the founder-led and like team branding route where we get them sharing stories behind what's going on and all this kind of stuff? Do we go down the, hey, let's run a bunch of online events? Do we run a bunch of in-person events? Do we go down the like heavy ads playbook, heavy email playbook? I feel like now more than ever, the space is like so crowded with trying to figure out which approach to take that people are trying to pigeonhole themselves into therefore only taking like one approach and not experimenting. But then they also get too scared to like experiment too much. And I think people end up getting in a loop and they're just going round and round and round. So when I'm speaking with people, I'm trying to encourage them like, hey, look, of course we're an agency, we're selling ads, like we run ads for SaaS companies, but ads should not be the only playbook. We look at what we're doing myself and with our team at Hey Digital on our like how we're all utilizing LinkedIn and how much of a significant impact that's had to our business. So we've experimented with that and we'll continue to do so. Like now we're experimenting with the online like events playbook with running some AMAs and other sessions and things like this. How do you like not even guide people in the right direction, but let's say that someone is in that space where they're like, hey, look, there's all these 20 different things we can try and they don't know what to do. Do you tell them to narrow down on like one or two things? Do you tell them to experiment with a few different things? Like how do you handle those conversations with them?
Yeah, I mean, what are you good at? Just focus on what you're good at, like
Right.
reflect, and then focus on how much short-term shit you want to do versus long-term stuff you want to do. Like ads are so short-term, so transactional, so
Right.
interruptive. Unless you're
Right.
doing Google ads, which the intent is you're typing in
Mm-hmm.
something and like you're hopefully getting a good ad. All the other ads out there, including LinkedIn, even it's like it's very interruptive based, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's a form of outbound marketing.
Yeah.
You can say, well, no, not really, because you're targeting now and like the people. So like, yeah, okay. So it's gray. It's like it's quasi inbound, quasi outbound. Um, but I think you just have to make a decision, right? Like, how much do you want to invest in the short term versus the long term, right? An ad is not an annuity. Doing something like building an owned audience or an owned community, which are two different things, by the way,
Yeah.
those are annuities. Doing things like community-led growth, which is activating, social networks and other communities that you don't have direct ownership of, it's both short term and both long term. So like you have to think about like, again, those are tactics and channels. What's the strategic value of those over time? And how much are they going to pay you back? And to what degree? Right? And what are your growth targets and your profitability targets and what timelines? And like, so again, it's all one and the same. But yeah, if that's why we built the model to have 7 different growth strategies. First off, not every business is going to use all 7 growth strategies. Definitely not. The best of the best do. There's many examples of that, but some of my local businesses that are selling physical things in my local community are using a combination of say 3 or 4 of those things in the model we've created to help them grow in a more efficient way. They've activated the community-led growth motion through using social networks because the internet is now so socially oriented. And they say, look, I'm going to activate that and lean in hard. And that's going to help me build up my owned audience of my email newsletter. And I'm going to deliver content through that email newsletter. So I'm starting to use content-led growth a little bit. And now I'm going to activate through some partners, other local businesses, to participate in the local weekly uh, uh, what is it called? Farmers market, right? And like I know these businesses, right? Like, great, I'm going to now participate in the Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to create a partnership with them. And so it's like, I think studying local businesses is what more SaaS businesses need to do, because there's a lot of them are extremely efficient at growing something that is an extremely high cost thing to market and sell, right? The margins are very hard on physical things like fish, for example, right? Versus some like stupid SaaS application, right? So I think we're way too deep in our own echo chamber. We're
Mm,
not thinking through like fundamental human psychology, human biology type things. And yeah, they're afraid to try things also because, the unknown is scary, but also they're being told by all these experts or investors, do these things and they're going to work. And like, maybe, but in many ways, like, they're not working at all or as much anymore these days. It's an expensive bet versus the founder led stuff, not as expensive, right? I
right,
mean, and it's kind of like obvious, right? Like, yeah, I mean,
right,
if I have credibility and respect and, I have some newsworthy things behind me, and my product is like legit enough, we're at the design partner phase, or we're at PMF or past PMF, like, why wouldn't I do that? Right. It's kind of like a duh aha moment. Right. So anyway, like there's, I digress a little bit, but to go back to your question, it's just like find the balance between short-term and long-term thinking. And this goes back to culture though. Like, what is the culture of risk tolerance? What's the culture of believing that the way in which, you go to market through paying people versus building relationships that build trust and equity? Like, it's just fundamentally different mindsets.
yeah, for sure. And I think it's super interesting because like I feel like a lot of you said SaaS marketers, B2B marketers, we can learn a lot from local businesses. And it's funny because I think a lot of SaaS marketers and B2B marketers have tried to take the complete opposite approach to that and try to avoid as much of this as possible, which is interesting. It's like even from an advertising perspective too, it's like looking at what it's pretty common for us to look at what D2C companies and really successful e-com businesses are running from their ads perspective to take learnings from this. But thinking about local businesses is interesting. I have a question actually that Arohi has asked me, and they say, okay, a question about the role of founder-led like storytelling within go-to-market strategies. The question is, as founders evolve as their SaaS product evolves. And given most categories' dynamic nature, should the GTM approach also be constantly evolving? I think that's a pretty like straightforward question. But I'm curious to see what you think about this too.
Yeah, I mean, your product market fit, your positioning and messaging are always a fluid thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, your go to market is always fluid because your buyers are always fluid. We're always evolving, changing, finding new things, learning new things. Our attention is going somewhere else. Like, it's all, but like there are some foundational things that, just hold true. Um, but yeah, I mean, and it also now is heavily dependent on like who is the buyer for that thing, meaning what's their age demographic. I think age demographic is so fascinating to look at. Um, I'm a millennial, so I was the last generation that grew up without the internet. I'm studying now a lot of now generations that are just native, digital and internet. Like, massive changes are coming in terms of how those people buy, right?
yeah,
I just, yeah, I mean, and then you look at the change coming with assistants and agents, and how that will change so much of how we interact with our life. Um, yeah, I mean, if you're not studying the things that are happening to the next set of generations and like how they've grown up buying things, and how that's now being infiltrated into the generations that are their parents and other things, like, because again, those generations are going to get pulled into it, right? Like, look at our grandparents, like they're on Facebook now, right? Like, and
right.
you look, are they are they going to use Facebook and like, whatever, like, I don't know, that's a whole different thing. But the fact remains that how your go to market needs to change goes back to who are you trying to sell something to, and how do they behave? Like, what are the psychographic behaviors And that's where like a common persona is missing these days, is like the psychographicness, like the emotional side of it, the side that like is like, hey, these people grew up with messaging platforms and they don't check their email a lot. So where you need to be is where they're having conversations online, and like maybe not as much in their inbox, right? Like sure, the
Yeah.
email still holds true for a lot of things, but like it's, you don't just build a relationship through email. Email's coming a lot later down once they actually respect and trust you, so that they can even first off get your email, but also then pay attention to it, right? Like, so it's just like a whole different degree of like order of operations that have now been changed and continue to change. So if you don't talk to at least 3 customers a week, and this is for people that are like leadership positions and definitely CEOs, but like if you're a director or a VP and above, if you're not talking to 3 customers a week, 3 customers or buyers, like you should start talking to people. Like that's my golden rule always. Like no matter what position I was, even when I was really early on at HubSpot, my goal was to like learn from buyers and customers and understand what they're feeling and thinking, and try to get into their mind as much as I can. And the best companies, are the ones that are able to kind of be the buyer. So like for example, like some of these SaaS companies, you could be a consumer of your product. So like you
Right.
should be the one that is using it. If you can do that, if you're in that position, you should be the one that is the ultimate example, if you will, right? Like, I mean, like, look, like, why wouldn't you be? It's almost like, you're selling something that you could be a power user of, but you're not a power user like that. And I see a lot of examples of that these days. Like,
Right.
okay, SaaS company, you're selling an outbound automated email tool. Show us your stats
Yeah.
transparently with how
Dude,
you do
that
that.
that
No one
always
does
blows my
it.
mind when there's like agencies, for example, like, hey, we're a paid ads agency, but they don't run their own ads. I'm like, wow, how's it? Because like we've run our own ads
Hypocrites.
now for the last like probably 3 years or something like this. I can maybe understand at the beginning when you maybe don't have any funds to spend on ads or whatever else. But it's like now, for example, we're leaning into the LinkedIn ads and like thought leadership ads playbook pretty heavily. And like one
Yep.
thing that's so great for us is like that play we're selling to SaaS marketers. That's who buys our service. We can run the same playbook that a lot of like mid-size ACV SaaS companies run on thought leadership ads, on content, on other things like this. It generates leads for us, but then also what generates leads off the back of running those ads is we literally just show everyone exactly what we're doing and what's happening. So I think it was even like 2 weeks ago, we did a post of this is exactly how much we've spent. These are the exact ads that we're running. This is exactly what's happened. And we've done videos on like showing inside our dashboards of this is how we track and measure the success or failure of our campaigns, whatever. And I find it very surprising when more companies aren't doing that with their own like tools and solutions. Because even for us, when we're running ads for other companies, the the clients that we work with that also like use their own tool and their own software, it's always so much easier to market those products because they know the products and the persona so much better. I know maybe not every marketer can do that. Let's say you're working in marketing at, I don't know, a SaaS company where it's a really technical product for developers or something like this, and you've never coded a thing in your life. And of course, maybe in these cases it doesn't make the most sense, but that's when you talk to customers. How about watching like sales calls and call recordings and things like this? Like, because I know you just said speak to 3 customers a week. I know it doesn't sound like a big number, but I also know that for some people that will seem like a huge number of how am I going to speak to 3 customers every single week? How do you feel about like what if they spoke to 1 customer and watched like 4 call recordings? Does that still count, or is that like a soft way out?
Yeah.
Because for me, one way I learn a lot about our current clients, our potential clients and stuff like this too is I look through so many of our recorded calls because we use Fathom, some people use Gong, whatever. It's so straightforward and easy to like ask questions, look at these recordings. Is that like as valuable too, or no? Like people have to be speaking to customers every single week, multiple times.
I think you need to do both, especially if you're executives. But like, no, it's still valuable. Like, no, you just
Okay.
want to get close to your buyers and customers. So yeah, don't do both.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, Something else I wanted to ask is like, okay, so there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn, on other channels about how the SDR and the BDR role is a dying role. I don't know how you feel about this. I think there are lots of different arguments around this too. But like in the people first GTM approach and strategy, And just in what you're seeing across your client base too, how are you seeing the role of a salesperson, whether it's BDR, SDR, account executive? How are you seeing the importance of that role transitioning? Because for me, I think the salespeople that are going to continue to excel and exceed are going to be those that are also very heavily focused on like content creation, on like networking on LinkedIn, on these other channels that you're talking about where the customers are actually hanging out now. Maybe that's in communities for others, but I'm curious to see how you think about that because I think you're working much closer to that kind of like day-to-day conversation than I am.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be as transactional as it has been, where it's just like, all right, we're gonna pass you a lead, you're gonna do this thing, and like there you go. Like it just like the best ones focus on those three things. They focus on, understanding and listening to the stories being told out there and crafting their own stories for the right buyers that they're trying to get in front of and then sell to. They're focused on using relationships with their customers that they've closed and within people in their company and in their network to get in front of buyers, right? And they're focused on partnering with the right people internally and externally to show how valuable this solution can be for that buyer to then get them across the finish line, right? And using partnerships as a way to find new buyers, right? So the best ones are definitely taking a people first approach, and they're taking control of their own destiny, right? So massive changes are happening to the sales organization in terms of productivity. And I think the productivity piece is going to be coming along the lines of like enablement and upskilling. AI should be able to make a salesperson so much smarter and more contextually aware of what's going on. And now it's like, how do I take my innate human ability and passion for what I'm selling and passion for helping these people solve this pain point and problem and apply that with this newfound knowledge I've been able to get and insights I've been able to get through the help of AI assistants and agents. So yeah, I don't think the BDR, SDR, nothing is dead. So like those people are saying that, like, and I've been guilty of saying something is dead too, and I don't do that anymore because it is stupid. It's like it's just completely, you never want to make almost a absolute statement. There's very few absolutes in life. So yeah, I don't prescribe to that. And I feel like the best salespeople are like, look, you're a salesperson, I'm a salesperson at the end of the day, right? Right? We're running our businesses, are the ones who really are gonna understand and listen very closely to those customers and buyers and be able to prescribe a custom path, a custom solution for them so that they understand what you're selling them and why you're selling it to them and how to actually take maximum value from what you're selling. So it's been said a lot, right? In B2B, the best sellers are the best teachers, are the people that are the ones that are going to help someone really learn something new. And I think that's the opportunity now. If a salesperson is willing to change their approach and go a greater length, right? A lot of this just comes down to, what do you believe? Like, do you believe and are you willing to change? Just like the culture of a company. Are you willing to change the culture of your company and believe in this new thing and then change? It's the same for like an individual.
Right. I actually think marketers and like content creators could be some of the best salespeople for B2B SaaS companies right now and probably outperform a lot of like traditional salespeople at software companies. But I think that's probably more important and valuable if you're like a software selling to other marketers. I think that's something I see this a lot because like for example, like you say, you're a salesperson, I'm a salesperson. Ultimately, we're running our own businesses, but like this business that we have at Hey Digital, we've built this off the back of ultimately like my personal content and LinkedIn content, and now expanding into other channels. Now it's growing. We have a salesperson, we have other marketers on the team too, but it's like this was all started off the back of content, and it was like I essentially at heart have been a marketer and understand people and conversations very well. I think if more salespeople started leaning into how can they actually bring their like personality to the table, how can they share stories where their buyers are hanging out. I think that's a crucial thing that you said earlier in the conversation too. Is like you just need to find where your buyers are spending their time and spend time there too, and provide them with things that actually people care about and are interested in, and communicate with people in the way that they actually like to communicate. Right, there's no point just forcing stuff on people for the sake of it, just to try and hit a number, because then you're never gonna hit the targets that you have. Okay,
Well,
cool.
the key is well, no, I think the key is, who do your buyers respect and trust more so
Right,
than where do
right.
they hang?
Right.
I think
Right.
that's a shift actually. And I think content marketers, yeah, they could be good in the beginning of the sales process. Absolutely.
Right.
Seen that firsthand. I think the art of selling is knowing how to be a closer, right?
Right.
So I do fundamentally prescribe to the fact that most of the great salespeople, they're competitive and they love winning and they love money.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There is some of that, and you can cultivate that within yourself, right? But like you have to, again, like, do you believe in it? Do you feel it? Do you like you know? And then you can learn that for sure. But like there is characteristics that are kind of like different versus like a marketer and a salesperson. Because I've done both. I see both now, right? And
Right.
um I don't disagree. I think for a great content marketer to be a great salesperson at a company, if they have a great enablement, program team to get them up and ramped up as a salesperson, and they are willing, um, to take that change in mentality and approach, they could be great. But it comes down to like just like an athlete, right? Like it's like like how much are you going to commit to the craft,
Right.
versus maybe not.
Right. Yeah, I get that. Okay, I want to be respectful of your time because I know we only have a couple minutes left. I want to ask two things, and you can feel free to lead in whichever direction you want with these, depending on how much time you have too. The first thing is people, I think ultimately one of my learnings from this conversation and from your content too is this isn't just a tactical play. It's not like, hey, we just come in and introduce these two or three things. It's much more of a foundational like shift almost in thinking process and thought process and approach. But at the same time, when people watch things like this, they're also curious about like, okay, are there any interesting like tactics that you're running right now that you could share? And I know from checking out, well, I mean, I've been following your content for a while actually, but from like monitoring what you're doing at the moment, I see that you're like you have this tack insider too, right? Which is your community as well. I'm curious to
Yep.
know if there are any interesting tactics that you're seeing your clients run right now that you wanted to like share and talk about, or even just like ultimately I have a feeling you're probably running your own playbook that you're then running with clients. But yeah, I'm curious like how big a part of your own go-to-market strategy is that is the Tack Insider, or what other things like this are you or your clients working on that you think people would find interesting to wrap things up here?
Yeah, I mean, I publish a new tactic every day inside of our community, inside of Slack. You can sign up for free for that. We have a premium version too. But yeah, I mean, it's tactics are, you could say they're easy-ish, easy hard. But one tactic is finding the people that your audience already is paying attention to and figuring out ways to build a relationship with those people and eventually partner with them
Hmm.
on events, on content, on an advisory board. Maybe that's the beginning of your own community. Finding those people is so important. Another tactic. What what is the value? And this is tactic and strategy. What is the value that is ultimately the thing that your customers are seeking the most? Like what is the thing? Like measurable. It's got to be measurable. Like what is that thing, and how well are you guiding someone to that value? Both like
Mhm.
in your product, but also throughout the entire customer experience, your marketing, right? Like, are you aligned? Have you aligned your go-to-market vectors to that value? So for drifters, like we want to help our customers get more meetings. HubSpot, it was more leads. ComScore, it's introductions, right? For you folks, ads, probably like leads, conversions, maybe it's something else, but like probably not clicks, right? But
Yeah.
it's something more downstream. Like what's that value, and how do you align everything around that core value, right? Like for us, it's word of mouth. How many people are talking and recommending, right? Like your product or service to someone else, right? It's like it's word of mouth. Like that is the value you're trying to get from a people first strategy, because word of mouth is the best channel you could have, in my opinion,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
nothing beats that. So,
Right.
and it's the best outcome you could have, right? So, uh, yeah, like what is that thing, right? And then like from a content standpoint, it's just like storytelling. Like, are you telling stories, or are you just like spewing out things that aren't cohesively put together? Like, like does your website tell a story, or is it just like a lot of like copy that is disjointed together?
Mm. Yeah, I actually think we're probably pretty guilty of from the website perspective, like our website, for example, is exactly what you would expect from a SaaS focused performance marketing agency. And it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but I'm sure it could be, there should be some tests and experiments we could run with like more storytelling led approaches on this or something else. Cause like you see our website and you see the three other like large SaaS marketing agencies, and to be honest, it's pretty challenging to tell the difference between those three. That's like something that I haven't actually put a ton of time into over the last couple of years, because like most of our customers are finding us through LinkedIn and through word of mouth also. So it's like we've focused on those like areas and channels and making that experience the best first. But I think that's a good reminder for me and for Manank here actually too. Okay, cool. So thank you. Like, thank you so much for the time, for coming and having a chat with us today. I know that I'm pretty sure in the chat we've already shared the link to your community. I know we have a few members, actually, I think even watching right now too, but we'll make sure we share all the links in the Zoom chat and in LinkedIn and other places like this too. And yeah, if there's if there's anyone wanting to connect with you, learn more about what you guys are doing, what's the best place to do it? Is it to sign up to the community? Is it to message you on LinkedIn, or what's the preferred route of communication for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tack Insider and like the LinkedIn stuff. I mean, Tack Insider is pretty active. And yeah, we just like to learn from other people. Like the best thing you can do is like grow together. You learn together to grow together, right? So this idea of, again, the internet shifting to be so much more about the social aspects of learning about things, information gathering, all these things, right? Like, yeah, you go to YouTube now to learn from other people, right? So it's like, it blows my mind how many companies, B2B brands, like don't have a YouTube presence. Like if you go to Tax YouTube page,
Mhm.
it's like, I mean, it's not perfect by any means. Like our thumbnails need a lot of work, etc. But like that's what's the point of it. Like we're teaching other people, and other people that are part of like the TAC, ecosystem is very, very small, but like are teaching other people. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there, but it requires a mindset shift. It's like, well, if I'm spending 60% of my budget on paid ads, could I spend 10% of that on this other thing and see how it works? And will my paid ad efficiency even go down? Probably not, honestly, right? Like you
Right.
guys would know better than I would, but like it's just the
I'll
status
do
quo. The status quo
most
at the end of the day.
yeah,
What's that?
most SaaS companies are wasting a bunch of money on their ads for sure. Like a
Bunch
bunch.
of money.
Yeah.
We see that all the time when we go to customers' accounts, right? So like, but here's the thing, right? Like Dylan, like the status quo is what's the thing. If
Right.
I'll end the conversation with this, the status quo is what you have to always fear. Like if you're not saying to yourself, "Oh my God, the status quo is going to eat me," the status quo will probably eat you, because like it will just suck you in, and like it becomes like, oh well, we're just checking the boxes, we're doing the thing, and there we go.
Right, right. Yeah. I think unfortunately a lot of people are kind of sadly comfortable with that too. And that's a whole different problem as well there, right? That's yeah.
Well, yeah, it pulls you in. It's nice, it's
Yeah.
comfortable, and then eventually just swallows you up, and like a competitor comes, and like you're like, oh my God, what happened to my business?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay. I want to make sure I let you run, but thank you so much for joining us today. We will make sure we send you a couple like follow-up pieces after this as well. And yeah, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a good rest of your day. And we've made sure to share links to everything all around this as well. So hopefully some people will be connecting with you too. But thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a good one.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. It was awesome. Thanks so much.
No worries.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mark.
Bye everyone.